So over the course of these 5 days, I imagine that with each meditation session, I'll teach a little bit something different each time. And certainly for today, each of these practices, and we're about to begin a third one, is cumulative. So you add one upon another like a layered cake. So we began ever so importantly, especially in this modern era, which is so busy, and there's so much stress, we all know that. It's so important, especially now, more so I think than in Tibet 500 years ago or India 1,000 years ago, to emphasize this initial step of relaxation. Because we moderners, we Eurocentric people, and they're all over the planet now, they're in Beijing and Hong Kong and Singapore. Our culture, our Eurocentric culture is really very dominant. Our education system is dominates China, Singapore, you name it, everywhere, South America and so on. It's very driven, our modern society. I will not elaborate here because it's the same society you know, but there's so much tightness and so much drivenness and so much massive input of information. And it's very easy to take the same kind of energy or attitude, perspective, approach that we take to other endeavors like getting education, starting a business, starting a family, going here, going there. And okay, now are you ready to start? And then we bear down, we contract. I get the job done. There's the fist, of course. But to contract and then try our hardest, doing your best, just trying your hardest. And that works for the short term, but it's also very stressful and very draining. We all know that. And so to bring that same type of attitude, that same type of approach, okay, now bear down, let's get to it. Try your hardest, do your best. Trying that meditation, I know from my own experience, I've tried that. And it works for the short term. You can get things done. And over the long term, it is not sustainable. It's just that simple. It's not sustainable. And so to begin, especially in this modern era, with that sense of relaxation, of release, loosening up, that's the way to begin, right? And so that initial settling of body, speech, and mind we did in the first session, very good preparation for anything else we're going to do. Have a meaningful conversation, prepare a meal, anything. If you can do that with your body relaxed and in inner calm. I learned something new just a day or two ago in Christchurch. And I've known for years about scientific studies of attention. I've learned when I was giving a lecture, part of a conference at MIT back in 2003. And scientific studies of jet fighter pilots and professional chess players and air traffic controllers. And what I heard from this very fine neuroscientist is that when in professions that require a high level of very focused and sustained attention, the longer professionals like jet fighter pilots in the cockpit for 5 hours, for example, the longer they're maintaining that very, very high degree of sharp, intense, and sustained, unbroken attention, the more exhausted they become. So when they get out of the cockpit, they're toast. And they may need 24 hours of R&R just to get over the damage they've done to the nervous system for the 5 hours there. I've heard this is even true. I spoke with a professional musician, and in performing, I think she was first violin for San Francisco Symphony Orchestra, I believe. I'm not sure of that, but I know she was in that orchestra. And I asked her after the performance, and boy, you cannot have a wandering mind. You cannot for a moment have a wandering mind. After the performance, how do you feel? She's really tired, really, okay. I offered my best. Now I need some rest. So that was my understanding of non-contemplative ways of cultivating attention, mindfulness, concentration. And then I learned something new, so I'll share it with you. I was having a lovely conversation with a man who had been a surgeon, neurosurgeon, I believe. And he said in the kind of surgery that he was doing, working with a team of people, the surgery could last 3, 4, 5 hours. And during that time, you cannot make one mistake. One mistake means the person's brain dead for the rest of their life. One mistake, the person will not survive the heart surgery. Whatever it is, you cannot make any mistakes. You have to be absolutely focused and continuously with stability and vividness, those two. But he said, the trick of the trade, he said it was known among all the surgeons, and I never heard this before. You have to be relaxed. You see, you have to be relaxed. I read of one brain surgery. It was to repair an aneurysm deep inside the brain. I think it was a 7-hour surgery. Well, you can imagine you're going in there with a brain that's cooled down to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, so pretty chilly. Imagine you burst one blood vessel, and now the person's worse off than before. But he said the trick was you've got to be relaxed. Only with relaxation can you maintain that precision, intensity, acuity, continuity of attention. I thought, oh, then that's more like the contemplatives, right? So cumulative. First thing is relaxing, balancing, calming, soothing. So now you're prepared to do something meaningful. And then we went to a technique that, first of all, is for the sake of developing shamatha, developing attention skills. Mindfulness, introspection, attention skills, samadhi. It's a cluster, like a bouquet. And mindfulness of breathing is just a marvelous method that the Buddha specifically selected out of 40 different techniques that he taught. As recorded in the Pali Canon, he selected mindfulness of breathing as the only one suitable for people who are very strongly prone to rumination, obsessive compulsive cogitation, and so on. That's the only one. As he said, if you practice the other ones, the more you concentrate, the tighter you may become. And I've seen that happen. But the mindfulness of breathing, it's soothing, it's calming, it's gentling. And breath by breath, you're releasing thoughts. You're not tightening up, binding your attention to a meditative object and then holding it there, holding on for dear life, attaching the elephant of your mind with a rope of mindfulness to the stake of meditative object. That's really good until it's not. Now, that whole approach, that metaphor has been used successfully countless times. Not so successfully nowadays. His Holiness, the last time I met with him personally in a one-on-one audience, he said, nowadays hardly anybody's achieving shamatha. The real deal. There's a lot of cheap imitations. But the real deal, fully achieving access to the first jhana, he said nowadays hardly anybody's achieving. And so I think a missing ingredient here, and I've learned this from especially my Dzogchen masters, above all, Gyatso Rinpoche, is a very strong emphasis on relaxation. Relaxation. Out of relaxation, stability. Out of stability comes the vividness. And then the vividness can accentuate your stability, and the stability can accentuate the calm, the ease, the relaxation of the mind. So mindfulness breathing is just a superb technique. First of all, for shamatha, developing your attention skills, your samadhi, that contemplative technology that you can then use in vipassana, contemplative science of Buddhism. But now in this approach of Atiśa, who was a Mahamudra master, no doubt about that. And you'll see it in his own text. And that whole Mahamudra lineage has been continuing on in Tibet for a good 1,000 years. The Dzogchen for 1,200, and they're very similar. The whole point of Mahamudra and Dzogchen, the central point, overriding point, is to fathom the nature of mind, fathom the nature of pristine awareness. So it would be like in a non-lucid dream. There are all kinds of virtuous things. You can be practicing generosity and patience. You can be about mindfulness, and for all kinds of things in a non-lucid dream. You might even develop samadhi, have a very focused non-lucid dream. But is there anything more important in a non-lucid dream than to become lucid? Because then you actually fathom the nature of the reality you're experiencing, rather than making do while sitting up to your knees in a pool of delusion, getting everything wrong. Thinking a dream is not a dream. No, these are real people. This is really happening, and it's freaking me out. And so above all, become lucid. And in Mahamudra and Dzogchen, above all, fathom the nature of mind and go right down to the ultimate dimension of mind, which is Buddha nature, pristine awareness, primordial consciousness. So for that, then we need technology. We need to develop skills that don't come naturally. I've been introduced this. I was first trained by Geshe Rabten, wonderful Gelugpa Lama, in 1976, so it goes way back. And then a lot more training by many teachers in the Kagyu Nyingma tradition from 1989 until the present. But in the Mahamudra and Dzogchen traditions, knowing what's the point, it is to fathom the deepest dimension, Buddha nature, the subjective clear light. The technology that's needed for that is developing a skill that just doesn't come naturally. So I learned this in 1976 from Geshe Rabten and so on. But for the last 20 years or so, I've had a very warm a meaningful friendship with an eminent psychologist by the name of Paul Ekman, a world-class affective psychologist. And he speaks at length and with great brilliance, frankly, on the imperative nature, the crucial role of developing a kind of metacognitive awareness of your emotions before you act on them. If you're feeling irritable, that's an emotion. Well, before you express your irritation in any way, it'd be really good if you know that you're irritated. If you're feeling really contempt for someone, before you express it, it would be good to know, oh, this is contempt. And likewise for other afflictive emotions that can be really do a lot of damage if we express them. He said he's not talking about repression. He is speaking about, to use his metaphor, recognizing the spark of an emotion before the flame of its behavioral expression with physical deeds or words, or even intentions, also a type of mental activity. But if you can be aware of the emotion, whatever it may be, maybe it's joy, maybe it's sorrow, maybe it's fear, but if you can be aware of an emotion before you enact it, before you express it, you push it out, then you have the possibility of making a wise decision. You see what's come up, there's the spark, but then you can raise the question, is this emotion worth expressing? If so, how? And if so, when? And maybe not at all. But if there's no interval, there's an emotion and you're immediately caught in its grip, and then you're acting, then the question of free will doesn't even come up. You don't have even, you're basically a stimulus response automaton. The emotion comes out and you spit out the response, what you're habituated to, what you're accustomed to. And so without going into the deep waters of do we have free will or not, you have the possibility of making an intelligent choice of if and when and how, or maybe not, expressing an emotion. And as Paul said, and in a way I love and many other people have appreciated, if you develop that skill, which doesn't come naturally, for our survival and procreation, that's all there is to evolution. Not getting better or smarter or handsome or anything like that. Evolution is only about survival and procreation and adapting to changing environments so you continue to survive and procreate. It's samsara. You don't need to develop this metacognitive ability, this awareness of emotions, to survive and procreate. You can have lots of babies and you get lots of food and be kind of like an automaton. But you may not flourish. You may survive, but not flourish. And I'll just end on this point. He said, if you don't cultivate and practice that ability to be aware of the emotion before you express it and make a choice to express or not, when and how, if you don't have that, then that can lead to many regrettable episodes. I always get a chuckle because it's just very well phrased. It's not moralistic, but it's shucks. I wish I had. Why did I open my big mouth? Why did I blurt that out? And I can't take it back. The damage done. I can apologize, but they'll still remember. And it's a regrettable episode. Now he is a very ethical man. I know him well, but he's not religious. Not religious. And so here we are coming back to the practice here. But I'm delighted to see, I rejoice in seeing that insight, that profound science has come from like an entirely secular perspective. He's not religious at all, but he's a very ethical man, a very caring man, a loving father, and so forth. And through his research, he's come to this conclusion, developing the metacognitive awareness of emotions so you're aware when they arise. You see how they influence the mind. You see how they're likely to influence your behavior. And before you act, before the intention, then you make a decision, and hopefully a wise one. And if not, then you can learn from your mistakes. That's the value of making mistakes. Sometimes they teach us more than avoiding a mistake. Man, did I blow it then? I'm not going to do that again. So this wisdom from modern psychology, because he wasn't the only one there, of course, we find the same wisdom in Shantideva. When you see your mind is afflicted with sarcasm, contempt, arrogance, and so forth, be like a stick of wood. Don't act until you come out from under the domination of mental affliction, and then do whatever you like. But not when you're dominated by mental affliction. Because whatever comes out is very possibly going to be one of those misconducts. You get us in a lot of problems. Find any misconduct, whether it's simply being rude or whether it's genocide or serial killers and so forth and so on, find any misconduct, any non-virtue, any sin, if you don't mind that term, you're always going to find a mental affliction behind it. You'll always forgive, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. You're always going to find ignorance. And you're going to find delusion. And then you're probably going to find some derivative mental afflictions as well. They come along for the ride. Self-centered attachment, hatred, and so forth. You'll always find that. A person who has no mental afflictions will never sin, will never engage in such ethical misconduct. So we come now to our practice. I keep on saying that. You'll get used to this from my side. We're now in this cumulative way. First of all, chill, relax, balance out, calm down, body, speech, and mind. And now gently, soothingly, caringly, warmly, gradually calm the mind. Subdue this wild proliferation of thoughts, conceptualizations, and so forth. Calm the mind, like the horse whisperer. Calm the horse, tame the horse, but gently and not breaking its spirit. So don't be battling with your mind, but rather calming, soothing, releasing. The mind will calm down. The mind will settle in its natural state. And what's the point of all of this? Now you're developing what's called a serviceable mind. You can now use that mind to write up a business plan or create some art or compose music or raise your children or go to work and so forth. You have a mind that's serviceable. It's been tuned like a well-tuned engine. But now what's all of this for? Just so you can develop really good attention skills and be a better video game player. They were also youngsters who are pros at video games. They were also studied at MIT. And it's the same thing. They are hyper alert. The winners, the champions, hyper alert, great continuity, great precision. And after they've been playing video games for a couple of hours, they're toast, because this all comes from contraction. And then it just, after a while, the fist gets really tight. And so where we're moving in this progression, settling body, speech, and mind, calming, soothing, gentling, developing mindfulness and introspection, the ability to monitor the flow of mindfulness, then we move on right into a mode of shamatha that is centrally emphasized in the Mahamudra and Dzogchen tradition. They know there are dozens of techniques, but if what you're really after is to fathom the nature of mind, then develop shamatha that's setting you up for that. And that's where we're going right now, okay? Please find a comfortable position. Supine position, sitting, cross-legged, any of those is fine. So to give it a name, the practice we're about to begin is called taking the mind as the path. It's also called settling the mind as natural state. But we'll find the referent of that title through practice. So let's begin. So we begin by relaxing. And now with very few words, as you rest your awareness right where it is, let the light of your awareness illuminate the space of the body, all of the tactile sensations arising therein, and settle your body in its natural state, relaxed, still, and vigilant. Observing the movements of tactile sensations within this field from the stillness of your own awareness. In order to settle the speech of the mind in its natural state of effortless silence, settle your respiration in its natural rhythm, as we've done before. And then while effortlessly resting awareness right where it is, holding its own ground, unwavering like an unflickering candle flame where there's no wind. Let your awareness rest effortlessly right where it is, self-illuminating, self-knowing, relaxed, still, and bright. And then with this platform of having settled body, speech, and mind, relatively in their natural states, continue to rest your awareness right where it is. Again, let the light of your awareness illuminate the whole space of the body. And among the diverse array of sensations arising within the body, selectively focus just on those sensations, those fluctuations throughout the whole body that correspond to the in and out breath. And in so doing, maintain an ongoing flow of mindfulness of the rhythm of the respiration, noting the relative duration of each in and out breath. From the stillness of your awareness, observe the movements of energies, fluctuations of sensations throughout the body that are clearly correlated with the inhalation and exhalation. From stillness, observe movement. As you are aware of the fluctuations throughout the body associated with the in and out breath, you bear these sensations in mind with your faculty of mindfulness, bearing them in mind without forgetfulness and without distraction. But to maintain quality control of this flow of mindfulness, you must be also monitoring the flow of mindfulness itself, recognizing as swiftly as possible when your attention is strayed, you've been caught up in wandering thoughts, excitation, distraction of any kind, you're off target. You need to note that, and you do so with the faculty of introspection. But the flow of your attention may also deviate, fall off course, by falling into laxity, dullness, a vagueness or boredom. So with introspection, we quickly detect the occurrence of excitation and laxity, and we respond. We see that your attention has been carried away by excitation. Relax. Release whatever captivated your attention and drew it away. Release it, let it go. And return to the flow of the breath. And when you retrospectively note with the faculty of introspection that the clarity of your attention is waned, you become dull, vague, nebulous, and refresh your attention. Take a fresh interest in the practice. Restore the flow of your attention upon the meditative object and do so with the intention to retain that flow of mindfulness, that bearing in mind the rhythm of the respiration. So in this way, balance your attention, free up deficit and hyperactivity. And with that preparation, we now move to the main practice, the new practice in this session, where we withdraw our attention even from the sensations throughout the body. We've already withdrawn them from the surrounding environment to the best of our ability, retracted into the body, and now we retract from the body. And we draw the flow of attention as single-pointedly as possible to focusing on the sixth domain of experience, the space of the mind, the domain of experience wherein thoughts, mental images, memories, fantasies, desires, and emotions arise. They're not found in any of the 5 sensory domains, but they can be perceived, observed in their own domain, the space of the mind. So now in this shamatha practice, we continue to sustain the flow of awareness, self-knowing awareness, holding its own ground, unwavering, unmoving. But now we deliberately let the light of awareness illuminate the space of the mind and whatever mental events arise in that domain, be they discursive thoughts or images, memories or fantasies, whatever comes up. We rest in the stillness of awareness and observe now the movements of the mind. And whatever comes up, now here's the real crux of this practice. Whatever arises in the mind, be it pleasant or unpleasant, virtuous or non-virtuous, peaceful or rough, coarse or subtle, whatever comes up in the mind, simply be totally present with it, without appropriating it, without identifying with it, without merging your awareness with it, without withdrawing from it, without perpetuating the thoughts and so on. Simply be present, discerningly mindful, non-reactive. Not seek to modify, to fix, to perpetuate or terminate anything that arises in the mind. Simply be present and let it be. Whatever comes up, it comes up spontaneously, effortlessly, naturally, and let it so dissolve of its own accord in its own way, but without intervention As you previously observed the breath, now observe the mind. Let your awareness hover motionlessly in the immediacy of the present moment, without being drawn to or repelled by anything that comes up in the mind. Observe without editing, without censorship. And there are bound to be intervals between thoughts after one has ceased and the next one has not yet arisen. That's a time to attend to the space of the mind, that sheer vacuity of the space of the mind from which these thoughts emerge and into which they eventually dissolve. Observe the movements, the motion when there is motion, and observe the stillness when there is stillness. In a lucid dream, you're able to recognize the dream as the dream. You recognize mental events as mental events, and don't confuse them with actual people, places, waking reality. Being lucid with respect to the mind makes you invulnerable to the events in the mind, because you know they are only empty appearances. They're not objectively real. They have no power of their own. And now we are seeking to become lucid with respect to the mind in the waking state, recognizing mental events as mental events and not mistaking them for the reference of the thoughts. The thoughts are thoughts. They are not people. They are not places. They are simply events arising and passing in the space of the mind. They are empty appearances. They have no power to harm you. They are mere appearances. They're empowered only when we appropriate them and reify them, take them to be objectively real. It is delusion that makes us vulnerable, and insight that makes us free. the best of your ability, maintain an ongoing, unbroken flow of mindfulness, of the space of the mind and whatever ariseth in it. But to maintain quality control, then monitor the flow of mindfulness with your faculty of introspection, by which you clearly detect your attention has fallen to the extreme of excitation or to the extreme of laxity. You see that rumination is set in. First of all, simply relax. When you see that the mind has become bored, awareness has become dull, refresh, take a fresh interest, and return to the practice. We are now achieving shamatha. Focus on the mind itself. The more lucid you become with respect to the mind in this practice, the more impervious you become to whatever arises, including emotions and memories. You're simply observing them without getting caught in their grip. You see they cannot harm you. And you are free from the tyranny of the mind. Mind is like the sky. It's like weather. It's always changing. It's dark, it's light, it's calm, it's clear, it's muggy, it's always changing. And awareness is like space, never changing. And the two are not really separate, but they're not the same either. So, this practice right here, this is a tool you use for every other practice mentioned over the coming days. The first dialogue between the two, the second dialogue about half as long, and the third actually a text, about a one-page text. But this practice here, the ability cultivated through this practice, learning how to direct your attention at will. Once you've focused your attention on something, learning how to bear it in mind, to sustain the continuity of attending with continuity. Learning how to monitor that so you're able to avoid the extremes of excitation and laxity, introspection. And all three of those combined, the attention, mindfulness, introspection, but those all cook well, cook well, let them all blend into each other. And then what comes out, the baked cake, so to speak, is samadhi. And samadhi is the second of the three higher trainings: ethics, samadhi, and then wisdom. So in science, your samadhi is achieved by way of technology. Telescopes, microscopes, particle colliders, and all of the array of making very precise and sustained observations, and then discovering so many things. But the mind of the scientist may be really, oscillating between dullness and excitation. Some scientists, I'm sure, have pretty severe ADHD. They can still function very well. The technology takes over and provides all the stability and clarity they need. That's great for objective, physical, and quantifiable things. But the mind is none of those three. It's not objective, physical, or quantifiable. But it's a natural phenomenon. That's what's often overlooked. It's a natural phenomenon. As natural as matter and energy is space and time. Consciousness is not. There's no evidence, in fact, that it's derivative of matter. That's simply belief. Just belief. And it's kind of an unfounded belief. But that's enough for today. But now that one introduction, we'll return to this practice again and again, because we'll use that base for everything else that comes in these two dialogues, and then in the culminating text that we'll look into. Enormous value. Enormous value. And even for those of us for whom in our present living circumstances, we're not ready to pull up stakes and head off to any of our 3 centers for contemplative research. Not ready yet, because we have demands on our time, responsibilities. That's fine. I do too, for about 3 more weeks. Then I'm out of here. I'll be heading off to Crestone for an indeterminate period of just strict solitary practice myself. I've been fasting for 10 years, not allowing myself to have such a long, intensive retreat. Now, time to go back. But for those of us who are not, and I am not today, not for the rest of this month, prepare then seasoning the day. I'll just end on this, we'll turn over to conversation. But okay, we can't put in 8, 9, 10 hours a day. We can maybe put in 1 hour a day. And sometimes, who knows, maybe so busy we just can't. If you can't, you can't. But what we can do, nobody is so busy. Nobody, and I've met some very busy people, but nobody's so busy that you can't take off 15 seconds here and 30 seconds there and a minute here and 2 minutes there. I love the phrase, because I think it's a very good analogy, seasoning the day. In a very busy day, or maybe all you could do is 15 minutes in the morning, and then, whoa, reality rushes in, and you have to do everything else, and you really have to. There are responsibilities you must fulfill. But everybody has a moment when you've just finished an email, you've just finished this, you've just done that, and you could, if you wish, pause for 30 seconds, for a minute, and mindfully breathe in and mindfully breathe out. You could pause for a minute or two, just rest in awareness, and watch all these appearances arising from the environment, from the mind, and just come back to your center. Dalai Lama commented just recently that he is really a master of Vipassana, of emptiness, teachings and practice of emptiness. And he commented, he's a man very busy, even at the age of 87, he still has a lot of responsibility. He can't give himself what I can give myself. I don't think he can take off for 3, 6, 9 months. I don't think he can do it. Too many responsibilities. That's the burden of being the Dalai Lama. But he says in any given day, he'll take a little break 20 to 30 times to meditate on emptiness. So if he can do it, then we can do it. And if we're not really ready to meditate on emptiness, then we can go into mindfulness of breathing for 30 seconds or a minute. We can come and rest in awareness, and from that stillness, observe the movements of the mind. It's like putting our fingers on the pulse. How's the mind now? How's the mind now? Is it afflicted? Is it non-afflicted? It's afflicted. Maybe I should take more than 1 minute out. Maybe I should just time out until the balance is restored to the mind. Okie dokie. I've taken a big chunk out of question and answer. We have 13 minutes. Any questions or answers? I'm here just to be still and listen to whatever comes up. There's a microphone here. We'll have more time in the future, in the afternoon. Believe me. So and it doesn't have to be a question. It could be a comment, or on occasion, I certainly err. So if you recognize I made a mistake, please feel free. or insights, observations. Kim, you're on. You have a microphone.
Thanks, Lover Alan. This has been sitting with me for a while, and I think it's somewhat controversial. I work with young people, and sometimes I watch things and see things where they are not connecting.
They're not
connecting or engaging. Let's use that word.
Not engaging.
Engaging.
Understood? Sure.
With each other. They're kind of pulling away or retreating. And in the work that I do, creating ensemble is very important.
Yeah, sure.
So I feel like I'm becoming like a grandmother,
yeah,
you know, of the turn of the century.
I understand.
Constantly kind of highlighting what's occurring.
Highlighting?
What's occurring, what I can see.
What's occurring? Yes. Understood.
A young man was doodling.
Yeah.
Very innocuous thing. But in that moment, there were people that were working in the space. It's an acting school. And people were working in the space. And that kind of energy.
Maybe the microphone's a bit too close.
Okay, maybe. Rehearsing. They were rehearsing on the floor.
Thank you. Got it.
So I said to this young man after the class, are you aware of what you were doing? Now, he took umbrage to what I said. Yeah. And I kept going further in. He said, oh, my ego just got in the way.
I missed that.
My ego.
Oh, yes.
Just got in the way.
I've heard about those. Yeah, they're really pesky.
And so he's very happy with that, just to slough it off because his ego got in the way. Yeah. And I said, you really need to think about this because you are affecting others.
Sure.
Now, I'm being quite firm. When I say I'm like a grandmother, I'm not being a teacher who's just going, oh, not a problem. Don't worry about it. That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm staying on something.
Yeah.
It doesn't make them happy when you do that.
No, it doesn't. Kids don't like being scolded.
They don't. But somehow, I don't know. And I'm trying to work out, do I go forward? Do I pull back? It's really a tricky one because I care about, I do. I really love them.
I don't doubt. Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I watch things that I think, this is not going to help you in life and it's not useful, but I'm probably being quite opinionated.
Well, a person who has no opinions has no mind.
Mm.
I mean, an opinion is a perspective. It's responding to a given situation and drawing a conclusion. So some opinions are ridiculous. They're just opinionated. But everybody has an opinion. They should. They better. And so would you like me to respond? Or any more you'd like to share?
No, I'd love your response.
You do before I said it. Wait until afterwards. The young people, young or old, because I think I have students of probably multiple ages, they're not slaves. They were not forced to come to your class against their will, kicking and screaming. And if any parent forces them to come to your class, you know that's going to be a short-term project. Because they're not going to stay. You know that. And so I think you can take as a working hypothesis, a really reasonable assumption that these, let's say young people, they're there because they want to be there. And so if, when you see them spacing out or not engaged or drifting or just distracted, none of which work in the performing arts, as you very well know, and none of which really work for anything meaningful to do, sports, running a business, and so forth, it's not a serviceable mind. That's how the Tibetans character. It's not fit for service. Right? It's not fit for service. It's like a soldier who's completely overweight, and smokes a lot, and so forth. Then you're not fit for the service. You may as well quit. And so I think one approach to take would be to identify explicitly what is the common ground between what you want as a teacher in this classroom setting and what do the students want in the same classroom setting. What do they want from you? And what do you want from them to make sure your time is not being wasted? Because students can waste the teacher's time. So you might as well just not have taught at all. If they're not paying attention, you're giving and they're not receiving. So then don't give, you know? And so I'm sure you, because you've been following the teachings I've been transmitting for quite some time, but I'll just refer now very briefly to the Fourfold Vision Quest, which begins with the question, what is it you're seeking? What's your vision? What do you wish for? What kind of happiness do you long for? Why are you coming to this class? It was not just, well, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, it's just kind of like accident, you know, go figure. They had something specific in mind. So why are you here? And keep on refreshing that. Why are you here today? Not why are you here the first day, but now that maybe the novelty is worn off and you're finding this is actually a lot of hard work. It's not just being a star, but you actually just, all the stars, I think probably without exception, had to put in the hard work. And that's true pretty much for everything, right? Then from day to day, week to week, you may know why you came. Why are you continuing? Why are you here today? What's your vision? What's your vision? And then you're the teacher. You're serving them as I'm here to be of service. I'm not here to any other reason, frankly. I have no other reason. I don't need anything. I actually don't, you know. But you come to offer your best. You received a lot, and you want to then you give a lot. You know, receive a lot, give a lot. And so you received a lot. And so you know your vision. And if you keep on inspiring them, why are you still coming? What more would you like to learn? What would you like to accomplish? What's the happiness that is the rainbow that you're seeking here? Why are you still coming? And I'm here to help you. But if you don't know what you want, I don't know how to help you. And if this is you coming out of sheer habit, because that's what you do on Thursdays, then I think you've lost the thread and you don't really know why you're coming, except for your parents expect you to, or you don't want to be a loser or whatever. So it's the same thing as the meditation we just finished. When you find, there you are, you sit down and decide, I'm going to now rest in the stillness of awareness. I'm going to observe the movements of the mind. I think it's meaningful, transformative, useful, as in Paul Ekman pointing out. It's core to things I would really like to go into much deeply, like understanding my mind. That's what I'd really like to do. And you sit down and 5 minutes later, you've gotten bored. And the mind is drifting. The novelty is worn off. The laxity is there. The dullness is there. You're not engaged with the practice. You're sitting there looking like you're meditating. And in fact, you're just spacing out on a slippery slope to falling asleep. And when you note that, and that takes introspection, then will refresh your motivation. Why are you sitting here? Why not just go out and watch television or go for a walk? Why not do something constructive? You're just sitting here. And so if you keep on coming back, when your own mind in meditation becomes a little bit listless, though the clarity, the vividness, the acuity is gone, then clearly you're not offering the best to the practice. You're giving something less. So then refresh. What's your vision? What's your vision? What's your aspiration? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this for the short term and the long term? What benefit for you? What benefit for those whom you may serve? And so this is why, as you know, in Indo-Tibetan Buddhism, they by and large don't start with relaxation. The Lupas never start with relaxation. I know. They'll start with renunciation, but they never start with relaxation. But again, renunciation has everything to do with motivation. Are you doing this because you simply want to reduce stress? Well, okay, that's not dharma, but if you want to reduce stress, that's understandable. You might also try a massage or a beer or taking a walk or listening to music. I mean, there are a lot of ways of alleviating stress. Why this? So if that's what you want, that's what you get. You know. But to keep on coming back to motivation, 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 that all of our lamas have said that countless times. What's your point? What are you aspiring for? What would you like to be free from? Then whether it's a rather innocuous practice like mindfully attending to the breath, which by nature is neither virtuous nor non-virtuous, just being aware of the breath, but with a motivation of renunciation, the aspiration to achieve freedom, complete and irreversible freedom, let alone the motivation to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And with that motivation, I will now mindfully breathe in and out. That gives some real motivation and continuity and inspiration. And so I think if the students keep on coming back, why are you here? Your time is valuable. I'm a teacher. My time is valuable too. What do we do with this non-renewable resource of the moments of our lives? Are we here to kill time? That's kind of a short term for suicide. Killing time is killing your life, right? In little pieces. And so keep on coming back to motivation, to the point that you're on the same page. You're here to learn from me. I'm here to serve you. Now let's work together. And I won't space out on you. I will not come out of sheer habit. This is what I do. We got to make a living. Well, this is what I do. I won't do that. You don't do that. Then we're all on the same team together. I think that might work. Yeah, we still have some time, please. You choose whatever you like. I'm impartial. The microphone's coming to someone. There we go.
What advice would you be able to offer for somebody who is in frequent communication with an individual that is working in a space that is high stress and
Working, I did miss it. Working in a space that?
working in a space that is highly stressful
Yes.
and possibly hostile,
Yes.
but at the same time, this individual doesn't know how to switch off and be relaxed after working hours or in certain environments, or there's constant fatigue or just being on edge.
Once again, we can rejoice in the fact that we are not slaves. The students in her class are not slaves. They were not sold into her servitude. And likewise in the marketplace, at least as far as I know, I didn't check. Oh yeah, that's good. But likewise in the workplace, we're not slaves. You haven't just been sold and now, they'll kill you if you don't work. So one way or another, we choose where we choose to work. That is a choice we can make, and we can remake it. So over the course of the 52 years that I've been explicitly practicing Dharma, I have on rare occasions been in an environment that was so antagonistic, so toxic, so unfriendly, so harsh, that I found I couldn't flourish there. It wasn't that one can't flourish there. I couldn't at that time. It was just stronger than I was. And I was finding myself getting a bit resentful and being exploited and so forth and so on. And so there are situations that are stronger than we are. Now, you may be in a concentration camp, in which case you have no choice. Then you just try to deal with it. But that's not true for us. And so if an individual finds him or herself in a work situation where it's just toxic, it's toxic, and one is finding oneself getting stressed out, unhappy, maybe getting some resentment coming up, sadness, anxiety, and so forth, there are on occasion, wherever we are in our spiritual development, maturation, it's very possible we'll find ourselves in a situation that is stronger than we are, and we know what we should be doing, and we can't. It's like my looking at a 300-pound barbell and saying, well, it would be really good if I can lift this. There's no way I can do it. It's just too heavy. And so in those situations where just with all one's clarity, one recognizes, I can't flourish here. I know what I should do, and I can't do it. It's just too strong. The atmosphere is too toxic, too abrasive, harmful, maybe abusive. Then exercise your freedom to quit and find a more conducive place. Hopefully that's an option. For many people it is. But while in the midst of it, then again, having very specific methods, not generally, well, don't be so stressed out. Don't be so uptight. Hey, chill. Hey, relax. Those are not methods. Those are simply injunctions. But that's not so easy. I remember years ago, I finished a very intensive course of meditation. It was Vajrasattva practice. I just finished 100,000 of the mantra. And so much energy was coming up, just suddenly, whoosh, like torrents of energy coming up. And it was really turbulent. And I went to my Lama at that time, Geshe Rabten, and I just told him, man, I mean, there's just so much energy. It's so turbulent. It's so agitated. It's just overwhelming how much energy is coming up. And he took one look at me and he said, relax. He's from Kham. He's from cowboy country. They never had any relaxation seminars out there. It was calm. It's, 15,000 feet. I mean, it's a spacious, relaxing environment. So all he could say, he didn't understand what's wrong with me. You don't know how to relax? I mean, yeah, relax. Hey, relax. I said, I know what the word means, but I don't actually know how to do it. So then we need techniques. And relaxation is something I actually started to learn as techniques, methods to achieve it, only when I encountered Dzogchen. And that was when I was 39. And so the methods we're doing here, this is just tip of the iceberg in 3 sessions. But first of all, just learning how to relax in the body, that's good. Then learning how to relax, this is very subtle, and it's the mediation between body and mind. In India, it's called prana. It's physical, but very subtle physical. It hasn't been detected by scientists. They can't measure it. They don't believe in it. But the breath is a mediator between the body with its, organs and lungs and air and all of that, and the mind, which has no physical qualities at all. The breathing is the bridge between the two. And if we're breathing in an unhealthy way, that's going to throw the whole nervous system off. And that's going to set the mind off, because the mind rides on the mount of the breath and energy. So having practical techniques, that settling body, speech, mind, that can be a really good start. Having times of just finding before work, and maybe during the coffee break, and maybe during the lunch break, and maybe there's 15 minutes. When I was teaching at University of California, Santa Barbara, I was teaching 3 times as much as a full professor, and I had office hours, and I was mentoring master's students and PhD students, and I was also teaching Dharma downtown as a Dharma teacher. I had a lot of demands on my time. But when I was in my office on campus, every time there was nobody there, I would lay out the yoga mat and go right into Shavasana and practice for 10 minutes, 15 minutes before the next student would come in. And that way I found it was really quite okay. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. So finding very practical, specific things to do. Mindfulness breathing is a balm. It really is a balm. It's not a panacea. It won't solve all the problems. So with that basic relaxation, cultivating inner stillness, then on that basis, then one can move into the much more dynamic array or spectrum of practices, such as the 7-point mind training of Atiśa. And the core of that really is taking adversity in the workplace, in relationships, nationally, internationally, and so forth, when with health, taking situations that one would say, boy, that's really an adversity. Boy, tough luck. Oh, I'm sorry for you. You work in such a grotty place to work. Man, I'm really sorry for you. It's adversity. And then you learn how to be an alchemist. You say, yeah, this is adversity. My boss is very abusive. This is heavy workload, and this person's really insensitive, and these people seem to be really devoid of empathy, and the workload is stifling, it's knocking me out here. And say, okay, this is called adversity. Now, how can I transform it? How can I transform? How can I transform this into renunciation? This is powerful. How can I transform this into deeper compassion, deeper empathy? Why is my boss behaving that way? Because he's intrinsically born as, a scoundrel? Don't think so. So however people are behaving, they're always causing conditions that are influencing and bringing forth what we see. And we're always seeing the tip of the iceberg. So if we can go deeper and understand, why is this happening? How is this happening? Then even the most difficult situations with a person who really has some mature practice can be transformed then into the path. And sometimes the more adverse, the more powerful the transformation that can take place. But meantime, for a person who has very little knowledge of Dharma, one option is just find another place to work. Not chickening out. Just like, if you're vulnerable to infection, don't go to a place where COVID is rampant. Don't go there. Go to a place where it's not so rampant. So just on a very practical level, don't bite off more than you can chew. Don't be thinking you're really heroic and then just collapse because you just can't handle that kind of person. Happens in a marriage also. I've never been in such a marriage, but the codependency, often it's the male that's abusive and verbally, physically, and so forth, codependent relationships. One can tell, let's say it's the wife, tell the wife, well, this is real adversity, and so try to transform it. But what if he's beating her every week? Not much way you can transform beating. So sometimes the best thing is to get out. Get out. And move to other pastures where you can actually flourish. So we have a whole array of choices. When I think of Dharma, just generally speaking, and I think we need to wrap up, in my meeting with Dharma over now more than half a century, one take-home insight that I have found is that the more we learn of Dharma, its depth, its breadth, its diversity, the more we discover that we have choices that we can make that we never knew we could make. Oh, I can make a choice here, and it never occurred to me I could. I can make a choice to be aware of emotions without being caught in their grip. choices and choices that we never thought we could make. Now we can. For that, we need to learn a bit of Dharma first. I hope that's helpful. I think we need to take a break. It's already 7 minutes past the hour. And so why don't we call it a day? And then tomorrow, then I would say the last period of 4 to 5, it will really be meditation and more time for discussion, right? So that's it for now. So why don't we just sit quietly for like 1 minute? We began with silence. Let's end with silence. In this 1 minute, my comments will be extremely brief. Now would be a good time to ask of ourselves, why did we come? Why have we stayed? Are we coming back tomorrow? And if so, why? What are our deepest and most meaningful aspirations for which this retreat may be helpful? Bring your most meaningful aspirations to mind and dedicate this time that we spent together, the virtue, the merit, to the fulfillment of your most meaningful aspirations. So the time we have together here is preparation. The main event is what happens when we step out the door. That's when the time for practice really comes.